The transport ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Valdris Prime. Captain Lee Hyun gripped his seat and watched the purple clouds swirl outside the small window. Lightning danced between the clouds like angry spirits. This was his first time on an alien world, and it looked nothing like Earth. "Welcome to Hell," said the pilot, a blue-skinned alien with 4 arms. "Hope you humans are tougher than you look." Hyun said nothing. He had heard this kind of talk before. The other species in the Galactic Coalition thought humans were weak. They called humans the soft ones or the emotional species. It made Hyun angry, but he kept his feelings hidden. The ship landed at Forward Base Omega with a heavy thud. Through the window, Hyun could see the military base. It was a collection of metal buildings surrounded by high walls. Guard towers stood at each corner, their weapons pointing toward the dark forest beyond. Everything looked gray and sad. Hyun walked down the ramp carrying his gear bag. The air smelled like metal and something else he could not name. It was not a good smell. Other soldiers moved around the base, but they all looked tired. Their faces showed no hope. "You must be the human advisor," said a deep voice behind him. Hyun turned around. A tall reptilian creature stood there. Its skin was dark green with yellow stripes. Sharp teeth showed when it spoke. This was General Korvac, the base commander. "Yes, sir," Hyun replied. "Captain Lee Hyun reporting for duty." General Korvac looked him up and down. "So small," the general said. "So soft. I do not understand why Command sent a human here. We need real warriors, not advisors." "I am here to help win this war," Hyun said calmly. The general laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Win? Boy, we are not winning. We are barely staying alive. The hive swarms attack us every day. They are like insects, but big as houses. They eat everything. They turn our people into food for their young." Hyun had read the reports, but hearing it from the general made it real. This was a bad war. The coalition had been fighting the hive for 3 years. They had not won a single major battle. "Show me the situation," Hyun said. General Korvac led him to the command center. Inside, dozens of aliens worked at computer stations. Maps covered the walls showing enemy positions in red. There was a lot of red. "Here," the general pointed to a large screen. "The hive controls 60% of the planet. They build their nests underground. We cannot reach them with our ships. When we send ground troops, they disappear. The hive knows this planet better than we do." A tall, crystal-like being approached them. Its body was made of blue glass that hummed softly. "General, we have lost contact with Patrol 7. They were scouting the eastern forest." "Another patrol gone," General Korvac said. "That is the 3rd one this week." He looked at Hyun. "This is Commander Veltar, our best tactician. Even he cannot solve this problem." Commander Veltar studied Hyun with glowing blue eyes. "Human, what do your people suggest? Your military records show many victories on your home world." "On Earth we adapt to the environment," Hyun said. "We use the land to help us fight. Maybe we should learn from this planet instead of fighting against it." Both aliens stared at him. Then General Korvac laughed again. "Learn from the planet? This is not a garden world, human. This is Valdris Prime. The storms here can kill you. The animals are monsters. The plants are poison. You cannot make friends with a world that wants to eat you." "Perhaps," Hyun said, "but I would like to see for myself." The next morning, Hyun joined a reconnaissance patrol. The team included 6 aliens, 3 reptilian soldiers like General Korvac, 2 insect-like beings with hard shells, and 1 floating creature that looked like a jellyfish with eyes. They moved through the forest, in single file. The trees were tall and black with purple leaves that whispered in the wind. Strange birds flew overhead, their calls sounding like screams. The air felt heavy like a storm was coming. "Stay close," said Sergeant Kex, the patrol leader. "The hive has scouts everywhere. If they find us, we run. Do not try to be a hero." They walked for 2 hours without seeing anything dangerous. Then the storm hit. The sky turned black in seconds. Lightning struck all around them. Rain fell so hard, It hurt. The wind howled like a living thing. The patrol tried to find shelter, but the storm was everywhere. "This way," shouted Sergeant Kex, but his voice was lost in the noise. In the chaos, Hyun became separated from the group. The rain was so thick he could not see his own hands. He stumbled through the forest, looking for his team. Lightning showed him glimpses of trees and rocks, but nothing looked familiar. Then he fell. The ground gave way under his feet. He rolled down a steep hill, hitting rocks and roots. When he finally stopped, he was in a deep valley. The storm raged above him, but here it was quieter. Hyun checked his equipment. His radio was broken. His weapon still worked, but he only had 2 energy clips. He was lost, alone, and the storm showed no signs of stopping. That was when he saw the webs. They covered the valley like a silver blanket. Each strand was thick as his arm and sticky like glue. Something big had made these webs, something that could catch large prey. In the center of the webs, something moved. Hyun crept closer, staying low. What he saw made him forget to breathe. A creature hung trapped in the webs. It was the size of a small aircraft with orange and black fur marked by white stripes. Its body was long and powerful like a big cat, but much larger. 4 legs ended in paws the size of dinner plates. Sharp claws dug into the web strands. Its face was beautiful and terrible, with green eyes that burned like fire. This was a storm tiger. Hyun had seen pictures in the mission files. They were the apex predators of Valdris Prime. The file said they were impossible to approach. They killed anything that came near them. They were death on 4 legs. But this one was hurt. Dark blood stained its fur. The webs held it tight, and it was getting weaker. Soon it would die. Hyun knew he should leave. The smart thing was to find his patrol and get back to base. This creature would kill him if he tried to help it. Instead, he drew his combat knife and started cutting the webs. The tiger's eyes fixed on him as he worked. It could have roared, could have tried to bite him. Instead, it lay still and watched. Its breathing was slow and painful. "Easy," Hyun whispered as he cut. "I am trying to help." The webs were tough, but his knife was sharp. One by one, he cut, the strands holding the tiger's legs. Then he moved to its body. The tiger never moved to hurt him. When the last web fell away, the tiger stood slowly. It was even bigger than Hyun had thought. Its head was level with his chest. One swipe of its paw could break his neck. The storm was ending. Sunlight broke through the clouds, making the tiger's fur shine like gold and flame. For a moment, human and tiger looked at each other. Then the tiger turned and walked away, disappearing into the forest. Hyun found his patrol an hour later. They were searching for him, worried he was dead. When he told them about the tiger, they did not believe him. "Impossible," said Sergeant Kex. "Storm tigers kill everything. You cannot get close to one and live." But Hyun knew what he had seen. And somewhere in the forest, a storm tiger carried the memory of a human who had shown it kindness. Neither of them knew this was just the beginning. 3 days passed before Hyun saw the storm tiger again. He was on guard duty at the eastern wall when movement in the tree line caught his eye. There, just at the edge of the forest, stood the massive creature he had freed from the webs. The tiger watched him for several minutes, then disappeared back into the shadows. None of the other guards saw it. Word about Hyun's encounter had spread through the base like wildfire. Most of the alien soldiers laughed when they heard the story. Some called him crazy. Others said he was lying to make himself seem important. "Humans and their imagination," said Lieutenant Zek, one of General Korvac's officers. "Next, he will tell us he can fly." But Commander Jin Woo, Hyun's direct superior, was not amused. He called Hyun to his office the next morning. Jin Woo was older than Hyun, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been fighting wars for 20 years. "Sit down, Captain," Jin Woo said. His voice was cold. "I have been hearing strange stories about you." "Sir, I only reported what I saw. What you saw was impossible. Storm tigers are killers. They attack anything that moves. The Coalition has been studying them for 5 years. Every attempt to approach one has failed. Scientists, soldiers, even robots get destroyed. Jinwoo stood up and walked to the window. Outside, alien soldiers were training in the courtyard. Do you know how many good people have died trying to tame those beasts? 47. 47 coalition personnel torn apart because they thought they could make friends with monsters. But sir, this was different. The tiger was trapped. It needed help. It needed food, Jinwoo snapped. And you were the closest meal. You got lucky, nothing more. Now I want you to forget this fantasy and focus on your real job. We need tactical advice, not fairy tales. Hyun wanted to argue, but he knew it was useless. No one would believe him until they saw it for themselves. That chance came sooner than expected. 2 days later, the base alarm started screaming. The sound meant only one thing: hive attack. Hyun ran to his position on the south wall as enemy aircraft filled the sky. They looked like giant flying insects with metal wings and acid weapons. The coalition fighters rose to meet them, but the hive had too many ships. Several enemy craft broke through the defensive line and headed straight for the base. All ground units, prepare for incoming, shouted General Korvac over the radio. The first hive ship crashed into the outer perimeter, spilling insect soldiers across the compound. They were the size of horses, with 6 legs and razor-sharp claws. Their heads looked like giant ant faces, but their eyes glowed red with intelligence. Coalition soldiers fired their weapons, but more enemies kept coming. The defensive line began to crack. Yun was shooting at a group of hive warriors when he heard a sound that made his blood freeze. It was a roar, deep and powerful, like thunder given voice. Every fighter on the battlefield stopped and looked toward the forest. The storm tiger burst from the tree line like orange lightning. It moved faster than anything that big should be able to move. Its claws tore through hive warriors like they were made of paper. Its teeth crushed their armor like eggshells. But the tiger was not alone. Hyun ran alongside it, his weapon firing at enemies the tiger could not reach. They moved together, like they had trained for years. When the tiger went left, Hyun went right. When Hyun fell back, the tiger protected him. The other soldiers watched in shock as human and tiger destroyed an entire wing of hive attackers. In 10 minutes, the assault was over. The surviving enemies retreated to their ships and fled. Base fell silent except for the crackling of fires and the moans of wounded soldiers. Everyone stared at Hyun and the massive tiger beside him. The creature's fur was stained with enemy blood, but it showed no signs of injury. General Korvac approached slowly, his weapon ready, but not aimed. "Impossible," he whispered. The tiger looked at the general with calm green eyes, then turned to Hyun. It made a sound, almost like a purr, and rubbed its huge head against Hyun's shoulder. Then it walked back toward the forest, stopping once to look back before disappearing into the trees. "How?" asked Commander Veltar. "How is this possible?" "I do not know," Hyun answered honestly. "It just is." But the alien commanders were not ready to accept what they had seen. That evening, they held a meeting without inviting any humans. It was coincidence, General Korvac insisted. The tiger was hunting hive soldiers. The human just happened to be nearby. The timing was too perfect, Commander Veltar argued. They moved together. They helped each other. Storm tigers do not help other species. It is not in their nature. Elder Thekmor, the Valdrian liaison, spoke for the first time. He was ancient even by alien standards, with wrinkled purple skin and eyes like black diamonds. "You are all young," he said. "You do not remember the old stories." "What stories?" asked General Korvac. "Before the coalition came to our world, we Valdrians lived alongside the storm tigers. Not as masters and pets, but as equals. The tigers could sense the great storms before they came. They could feel the electricity in the air, the changes in pressure. They saved many lives. But you never rode them into battle," Commander Veltar said. "No," Elder Thekmor admitted. "We were not warriors like the humans, but the bond was real. The tigers chose which Valdrians they would trust. Most of us they ignored, but a very few they accepted. And now a human has been accepted," General Korvac said slowly. "It seems impossible, but so did many things before they happened." The meeting ended without agreement. Half the commanders believed what they had seen. The other half refused to accept it. But in the human quarters, word spread quickly. Captain Lee Hyun had done something no alien could do. He had gained the trust of Valdris Prime's most dangerous predator. Some humans were excited, others were scared. All of them wondered the same thing. If Hyun could bond with a storm tiger, what else might humans be capable of? Outside the base, in the dark forest, Green Eyes watched and waited. The tiger had tasted battle alongside a human. It had felt the strange bond that connected their minds across the species barrier, and it wanted more. The attacks came every night for a week, not on the base but on hive positions throughout the sector. Each morning brought reports of destroyed enemy outposts and supply lines. The attacks were too precise to be random, too coordinated to be the work of animals. General Korvac studied the reports in his office. Red marks on the map showed where hive forces had been hit. The pattern made no sense according to normal military tactics, but it was devastatingly effective. "It is the human and his pet," said Lieutenant Zek. "They are conducting unauthorized raids." "Impossible," General Korvac replied. "Captain Lee has been on base every morning. I have checked." "Then how do you explain this?" Lieutenant Zek pointed to the map. 12 hive positions destroyed in 7 days. Our best commando teams could not achieve these results. The general had no answer, but he knew something had changed. The war was shifting in ways he did not understand. Commander Jin Woo confronted Hyun that afternoon. "What are you doing out there?" "I am sleeping in my bunk every night, sir. You can check the logs. The logs show you are here. But the hive losses tell a different story." Hyun met his commander's eyes. "Maybe the storm tigers are fighting back. This is their world too." Jin Woo studied him for a long moment. "If you are conducting operations without authorization, I need to know." "I have conducted no unauthorized operations." It was technically true. Hyun was not commanding the attacks, but every night he felt a pull in his mind. A call from the forest. He would walk to the eastern wall and stand guard duty. The tiger would appear at the tree line. They would look at each other across the distance, and somehow Hyun would know. Where the enemy was strongest, where they were weakest. He never left the base. But his mind seemed to travel with the tiger, sharing its hunt through some connection he could not explain. The breakthrough came when scout drones discovered a massive hive processing facility hidden in the northern mountains. It was heavily fortified, surrounded by energy barriers and automated defenses. Intelligence estimated over 10,000 enemy soldiers guarded the complex. "We need to destroy it," General Korvac told his staff. "But how? Our ships cannot penetrate. Their defenses. A ground assault would be suicide." "Request orbital bombardment," suggested Commander Veltar. "The facility is built into the mountain. We would need planet-killer weapons to reach it. The coalition will not approve that level of destruction." The meeting dragged on for hours without progress. Every plan they developed had fatal flaws. The facility was simply too well defended. Finally, Elder Thekmore spoke. "There is a way, but you will not like it." "Tell us," General Korvac said. "The northern mountains are where the great storms are born. In 3 days, the seasonal tempest will begin. It will last for a week. During that time, no aircraft can fly. No electronics will function. The electromagnetic energy will destroy anything not naturally shielded. That makes the facility even more impossible to attack. For normal forces, yes, but storm tigers thrive in such conditions. The electrical energy makes them stronger, faster, more aware. They become living lightning." General Korvac understood immediately. "You want us to send the human and his tiger into the storm. It is the only way to reach the facility during the tempest, and the only time the hive defenses will be down." The room fell silent. Everyone knew it was a death mission. Even if the human and tiger could survive the storm, they would face 10,000 enemies alone. "I will not order a suicide mission," General Korvac said finally. "Then ask for volunteers," Elder Thekmore replied. They called Hyun to the command center and explained the situation. He listened without comment, studying the tactical displays and weather reports. "Well," asked General Korvac. Will you attempt it? Hyun was quiet for several minutes. In his mind, he could feel something stirring, a presence that was not his own but somehow connected to him. The tiger was out there, waiting. I need to see the facility myself, Hyun said. That is impossible. It is too well guarded. Not from the air. I need to understand the target before I can plan an approach. General Korvac arranged for a high-altitude reconnaissance flight. Hyun studied the hive facility through telescopic lenses as their ship circled at maximum range. The complex was even larger than the reports indicated. It sprawled across several mountain peaks, connected by bridges and tunnels. But as he watched, Hyun began to see patterns. The enemy had built their defenses to resist conventional attacks. They expected ships and tanks and organized armies. They were not prepared for something that could move through electromagnetic storms like they were clear skies. I will do it, he told General Korvac when they returned to base. Are you certain? This is not a mission you can retreat from. Once the storm begins, you will be cut off from all support. I understand. And your tiger? How do you know it will accompany you? Hyun smiled for the first time in days. It is already waiting. That night he walked to the eastern wall one final time. The tiger emerged from the forest, larger and more magnificent than ever. Its eyes held an intelligence that seemed almost human. Are you ready? Hyun whispered. The tiger's purr was like distant thunder. In 2 days they would ride lightning into the heart of enemy territory. Neither expected to return. But sometimes legends are born from impossible choices. The storm began at dawn on the 3rd day. Hyun watched from the observation deck as black clouds swallowed the northern mountains. Lightning danced between the peaks like angry gods at war. The electromagnetic readings were off the charts. All aircraft grounded, announced the base controller. All electronic equipment switching to backup power. The tempest will peak in 6 hours. General Korvac found Hyun checking his equipment one final time. The human wore light armor and carried only basic weapons. Everything else would be destroyed by the storm. Last chance to change your mind, the general said. The tiger is waiting, Hyun replied simply. They walked to the eastern gate together. A small crowd had gathered to watch despite the danger of the approaching storm. Aliens from every coalition species stood in the rain, their faces showing mixtures of disbelief and hope. Commander Jin Woo stepped forward. Captain Lee, I want you to know that whether this works or not, you have already done something remarkable. You have given us hope. Thank you, sir. Elder Thekmore approached with a small device in his hands. This is a storm beacon, he explained. It will help you navigate in the electromagnetic chaos, but remember it will only work for a few hours before the energy destroys it. Hyun clipped the beacon to his belt and walked through the gate. The tiger was there, waiting in the rain. Lightning reflected off its wet fur, making it look like a creature made of fire and electricity. As Hyun approached, the tiger lowered itself to the ground. Without hesitation, he climbed onto its back. The fur was coarse but warm, and he could feel the powerful muscles beneath. For the coalition, he called back to the watching crowd. Then they were running. The tiger moved through, the storm like it was born from it. Rain that would have blinded normal eyes seemed to guide their path. Lightning that would have killed any other creature danced around them like friendly spirits. Hyun had expected to feel terrified. Instead, he felt more alive than ever before. The storm's energy flowed through the tiger and into him. He could sense electromagnetic currents in the air, could feel the pulse of the planet's magnetic field. It was like gaining a new sense he never knew existed. They covered the distance to the mountains in 2 hours, moving faster than any vehicle could have managed. The hive facility appeared through the storm like a dark metal cancer growing from the stone. Just as Elder Thekmore had predicted, all the facility's defenses were down. Energy barriers flickered and failed. Automated weapons sparked and went silent. The hive soldiers stumbled around blindly, their electronic guidance systems destroyed by the electromagnetic interference. Hyun and the tiger struck like a force of nature. They came down the mountainside in a controlled avalanche of claws and weapons fire. Hive warriors tried to form defensive lines, but they could not see their attackers clearly through the storm. The tiger moved between lightning strikes using the electrical discharge to mask their approach. Hyun had studied the facility's structure during the reconnaissance flight. He knew exactly where to strike for maximum damage. While the tiger created chaos among the enemy soldiers, he planted explosive charges at key structural points. The first building collapsed in a shower of sparks and debris. Then the second. The hive forces began to panic, running in all directions as their carefully organized positions fell apart. But there were still thousands of them and only one human and one tiger. "We need to reach the central core," Hyun shouted over the storm, though he knew the tiger could not understand his words. Somehow, though, it seemed to know what he meant. They fought their way deeper into the complex, leaving destruction in their wake. The tiger's claws tore through metal walls like paper. Hyun's weapons picked off enemies that the tiger could not reach. They moved together with perfect coordination, as if they shared the same mind. The central core was a massive chamber filled with hive processing equipment. Thousands of captured coalition prisoners hung in suspended animation, waiting to be converted into food for hive larvae. The sight filled Hyun with rage. He planted his largest explosive charge while the tiger held off waves of attacking enemies. The timer showed 30 seconds, more than enough time to escape if they had been anywhere else. But the storm was reaching its peak. Lightning struck the facility continuously now, turning the metal structure into a giant conductor. Every surface sparked with electrical energy. There was no safe path out. The tiger looked at Hyun with understanding in its green eyes. They had known this might be a one-way mission. "It has been an honor," Hyun said softly. The explosive went off. The entire facility began to collapse, but instead of being crushed, Hyun felt the tiger surge upward. Somehow, it was using the lightning itself as a ladder, riding the electrical currents up through the collapsing structure and out into the open sky. They landed hard on a mountainside 5 kilometers away, both of them smoking from electrical burns but alive. Behind them, the hive facility disappeared in a pillar of fire that could be seen through the storm. When they returned to base 6 hours later, every soldier in the coalition cheered. The impossible mission had succeeded. 10,000 hive soldiers were dead, and their primary processing facility was destroyed. But more importantly, something had changed in how the other species looked at humans. "How many of your people could do this?" General Korvac asked. "I do not know," Hyun answered honestly. "We have never tried." Within a week, 3 more human volunteers arrived on Valdris Prime. Private Park Min-jun was a young soldier from Seoul. Sergeant Kim So-young was a veteran Special Forces operator. Lieutenant Choi Dae-ho was a pilot whose ship had been shot down. Each of them attempted to bond with one of the planet's remaining storm tigers. The results were mixed. Park Min-jun succeeded beyond everyone's expectations. He bonded with a smaller, faster tiger that the base personnel nicknamed Swift. Their connection was so strong that they seemed to share thoughts. Kim So-young managed a partial bond with an older, more cautious tiger called Gray. They could work together, but it required constant effort and concentration. Choi Dae-ho failed completely. The tiger he approached simply ignored him, walking away as if he did not exist. Dr. Ri Da-eun arrived with the second wave of human reinforcements. She was a xenobiologist specializing in animal behavior. Her job was to figure out why some humans could bond with storm tigers while others could not. "It is not about intelligence or training," she reported after weeks of study. "The successful bonds seem to involve emotional compatibility. Humans who are naturally intuitive, who trust their instincts over logic, have the best chance." "What about the aliens?" asked General Korvac. "Why can none of us form these bonds?" Dr. Ri hesitated. "Your species have evolved different mental patterns. You rely more on analysis and structured thinking. The storm tigers respond to something more primal, more emotional." It was not an insult, but many of the alien commanders took it as one. The idea that human weakness was actually a strength challenged everything they believed about military effectiveness. But the results spoke for themselves. Human tiger teams began winning battles that had been considered impossible. They moved through storms that grounded all aircraft. They struck at targets that conventional forces could not reach. The tide of war was finally turning. The Hive, meanwhile, began adapting their tactics. They could not predict the Storm Tiger's movements, but they could prepare for them. They started building underground bunkers that were harder to collapse. They developed new weapons designed specifically to kill large predators. Most importantly, they began hunting the tigers themselves. Intelligence reports indicate the Hive is actively seeking storm tiger nests. Commander Veltar briefed the command staff. They want to eliminate the threat before more humans can form bonds. "How many tigers are left on the planet?" asked Jin Woo. Elder Thekmore's answer chilled everyone in the room. Perhaps 50, maybe fewer. They were already endangered before the war began. The humans realized they were fighting against time. If the Hive succeeded in wiping out the storm tigers, humanity's advantage would disappear. The war would return to its previous stalemate, and the coalition would eventually lose. But Hyun had a different concern. As he stood on the eastern wall that night, watching for his tiger companion, he felt something new in their mental connection. It was not fear or anger. It was anticipation. The tigers were not just defending themselves anymore. They were preparing for something bigger, something that would end the war once and for all. In the distance, lightning flashed without thunder. The dry season was ending. Soon, the great storm would come, and when it did, the final battle would begin. The great storm was still 3 days away when the Hive launched their final assault. Every enemy ship in the sector converged on Valdris Prime at once. Orbital scanners showed over 1 million ground troops preparing to land, supported by thousands of aircraft and heavy weapons. "They know about the Storm Tigers," General Korvac told the emergency command meeting. "They are trying to end this war before the great storm arrives." "How long until the storm hits?" asked Commander Jin Woo. Elder Thekmore consulted his instruments. 72 hours, maybe less." "Not enough time," said Commander Veltar. "Their advance forces will reach us in 12 hours. We cannot hold them off for 3 days." The coalition fleet in orbit was outnumbered 5-1. The ground forces at Forward Base Omega had maybe 20,000 soldiers. Against 1 million enemies, their chances were essentially zero. "We need to evacuate," suggested Lieutenant Zek. "Evacuate to where?" General Korvac snapped. "If we lose Valdris Prime, the Hive controls this entire sector. They will have a direct route to the core worlds." "Then we make our stand here," Jin Woo said quietly. "We buy time for the civilian populations to escape." It was a death sentence, and everyone knew it. But it was better than letting billions of innocents die. That night, Hyun walked to the eastern wall one final time. The tiger was waiting, but it was not alone. 24 other storm tigers had gathered at the forest edge. Their eyes glowed in the darkness like fallen stars. Among them, Hyun recognized Swift with Park Min-jun on its back and Gray carrying Kim So-young. Other tigers bore no riders. These were the last wild tigers on the planet, come to join what might be their final battle. "Beautiful," whispered Dr. Ri Da-un, who had come to watch. "I have never seen so many together." As if responding to her words, all the tigers turned their heads toward the humans on the wall. Their combined gaze was like looking into the heart of a storm. "They know," Hyun said softly. "They know what is coming." The first Hive dropships landed at dawn. Thousands of insect warriors poured from the metal pods, their acid weapons melting through the outer defensive lines. Coalition soldiers fought bravely, but they were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. By noon, the base was surrounded. Energy barriers flickered and failed under constant bombardment. The medical bay filled with wounded. Ammunition began to run low. "All units, fall back to the inner perimeter," General Korvac ordered. "Prepare for final assault." But the final assault never came. The Storm Tigers attacked the Hive forces from behind, moving like liquid lightning through their ranks. Each tiger carried a human rider, and together they carved through enemy formations that should have been impossible to break. Hyun and his tiger led the charge, but they were no longer alone. 24 human-tiger pairs struck simultaneously at different points, creating chaos throughout the Hive army. The aliens had prepared for a siege, not for cavalry charges by giant predators. The battle raged for hours. Human and tiger fought side by side against impossible odds, their movements synchronized by bonds that transcended species. When one pair was overwhelmed, others came to their aid. When ammunition ran low, claws and teeth took its place. But even with the tiger's help, the coalition was still outnumbered 50-1. For every enemy they killed, 10 more took its place. Slowly, inevitably, they were being pushed back. The situation became desperate when the Hive brought up their heavy weapons. Massive energy cannons designed to destroy fortified positions began targeting the tigers directly. 3 pairs were killed in the first volley. 2 more fell to acid bombers. "We cannot hold them," Park Min-jun reported over the radio. His voice was strained with exhaustion. "Keep fighting," Hyun replied. "The storm is almost here." And it was true. The sky had turned black at the edges and lightning was beginning to dance on the horizon. But the great storm was still hours away and they were running out of time. That was when Elder Thekmore made his decision. The old Valdrian had been studying weather patterns for most of his long life. He knew the planet's moods better than anyone alive. And he knew something the others did not. The great storm could be summoned early, if someone was willing to pay the price. He walked to the top of the command center carrying a device that hummed with barely contained energy. It was a weather manipulator, a piece of ancient Valdrian technology that had been forbidden for centuries. "Elder, what are you doing?" called General Korvac. "What I should have done years ago," the old alien replied. "This is our world. Time to remind everyone of that fact." He activated the device. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The approaching storm suddenly accelerated, rushing toward them like a living thing. The sky exploded with lightning. Electromagnetic pulses began shutting down electronics across the battlefield. But Elder Thekmore did not live to see the results. The feedback from the weather manipulator killed him instantly, his body consumed by the same energies he had unleashed. The great storm arrived like the wrath of an angry god. Lightning struck continuously, turning the battlefield into a landscape of fire and electricity. Hive aircraft fell from the sky as their systems failed. Ground vehicles sparked and died. Even the massive enemy cannons went silent as their power cores overloaded. In the chaos, something impossible happened. The storm tigers began to change. Their fur crackled with electrical energy. Their eyes blazed brighter than stars. They moved faster than thought, disappearing and reappearing like ghosts made of lightning. The storm was not just empowering them. It was transforming them into something beyond physical existence, and their human riders changed with them. Hyun felt his consciousness expand beyond his body. He could see through the tiger's eyes, feel through its senses, think with its mind. The boundary between human and tiger dissolved completely. They became a single entity, part storm and part flesh, part lightning and part will. Around him, the other bonded pairs underwent the same transformation. They were no longer cavalry, riding tigers into battle. They were living storms given form and purpose. The Hive army, already crippled by the electromagnetic chaos, began to panic. Their enemies had become forces of nature itself. How do you fight lightning? How do you kill a storm? Hyun and Tiger struck at the heart of the enemy formation, moving through walls of electricity as if they were made of air. Behind them came the others, each pair blazing with power that turned night into day. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Humans and tigers danced through lightning strikes, their combined consciousness guiding them to strike where the enemy was weakest. They did not just defeat the Hive forces, they broke them utterly, scattering a million-strong army like leaves in a hurricane. When the great storm finally passed, the battlefield was silent except for the crackling of dying fires. The Hive army was gone, either dead or fled. The coalition had achieved the impossible. Total victory against overwhelming odds, but the cost had been high. Of the 24 human tiger pairs that had entered the storm, only 16 emerged. The others had burned themselves out in the fires of transformation. their life energy consumed by the power they had wielded. Hyun and his tiger survived, but they were changed forever. The bond that had begun with a simple act of kindness had become something deeper than friendship, stronger than love. They were two minds sharing one soul, two hearts beating as one. In the days that followed, as news of the victory spread throughout coalition space, reporters and historians tried to understand what had happened. They interviewed survivors, analyzed battle footage, consulted xenobiologists and military experts. But the truth was simpler than any of their theories. Humans had done something no other species could do. They had learned to trust completely, to bond completely, to become something greater than the sum of their parts. Where other species saw weakness in human emotion and intuition, the storm tigers had seen strength. The war was over. The hive, broken by their defeat, sued for peace and withdrew to the outer rim. Valdris Prime was safe, and with it the entire sector. But the real victory was not military. It was the proof that cooperation between species could achieve miracles. The human-tiger bond became a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy, showing that understanding could bridge any gap, that trust could overcome any obstacle. Years later, statues of Hyun and his tiger were erected in the capital cities of a dozen worlds. Children of every species learned their story in school. The phrase, "riding tigers into legend," became synonymous with achieving the impossible through courage and trust. And on Valdris Prime, in the forest where lightning still danced between the trees, the descendants of those first bonded pairs continued their partnership. Human children grew up alongside tiger cubs, learning to share thoughts and dreams across the species barrier. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from conquest, but from connection. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is not technology or tactics, but trust. And sometimes, when everyone says something is impossible, a human will prove them wrong by riding a tiger into legend.